Hello, everybody. It's me again, and today I will be talking about the White Phantoms of Dark Souls 2 and what their whole deal is. Now, if you've played the first Dark Souls, you know that there are a few characters that you can encounter as NPC phantoms, but you never meet them in person, like these two on the right here. This is Witch Beatrice on the top and Iron Tarkus on the bottom. They had their own unique equipment and specific lore relating to them that you could uncover in game. Um, Now, in vanilla Dark Souls 2, or in Dark Souls 2, the vast majority of NPC phantoms uh, have no unique equipment, and they have no lore specific to them. Rather, Dark Souls 2 went for a system where many boss fights had a unique NPC that could be summoned for that boss fight, but nowhere else. Now, this would change in DLCs and as with the Scholar of the First Sin re-release, which spread out NPCs more across the world. It gave each of them some more summoning opportunities. And it also focused on making NPCs, instead of giving them their own unique lore, it focused on giving them more interesting loadouts and interesting unique behaviors that haven't been seen in really any other game since. Now, the vibe that Dark Souls 2 Phantom NPCs give off is that overwhelmingly they're just guys. Like they're not legendary heroes or anything, but you're also just a guy in Dark Souls 2. You're not the chosen undead. You're a guy with a curse who is just looking to get rid of it. So why not work together? Okay, so what exactly am I going to be doing here? Well, first of all, I'm going to be speculating on who these people are and why you find them where you find them. I'm going to be talking about what makes each one unique from all the others, because they are often really overlooked as opposed to, Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 1 NPCs. Nobody really pays these guys any attention. I'm going to give some tips or some anecdotes about how they actually function in gameplay, because with so many of them, they are a crapshoot. Um, and this video will only cover the white phantoms that were implemented in the vanilla game and DLCs. Uh, Later, I'll make a video covering the red phantoms and then a video covering the Scholar of the First Sin exclusives, which is where they really decided to go wild and get really creative with how some of these NPCs behaved. Now, a quick disclaimer is that I don't actually know Japanese. I will be talking about like some Japanese translations of these characters' names. All of this information was gathered using a Japanese version of a wiki and a kanji dictionary online. I don't actually know any Japanese, but it's not as much of an issue here because all that really matters in this context is their names. And they don't have any dialogue that needs an actual functional knowledge of Japanese to understand. All right, starting off with our first gentleman right here, which is Masterless Glencore. You can summon him in the vanilla game in Hade's Tower of Flame for the Dragon Rider boss fight. He was also included in the Crown of the Ivory King DLC as a summon for the Ava, the Queen's Pet boss fight. And in the Scholar of the First Sin edition, they allowed you to summon him in Belfry Luna to help fight off Bell Covenant players. His name in Japanese is closer to Wandering Glencore, which, I mean, they're basically the same. thing in this context. The idea is that he's a ragged knight, without a master. He's wandering the land in search of something to do. His given name is completely made up. It doesn't have, like, there's nobody actually called Glencore anywhere in the world, at least nobody that I've heard of. From what my best guess is that his name is either based off of a combination of Glen and Cole. So his name is actually like Glen Cole, or he's named after Glencoe, which is a valley in Scotland. Now, my theory as to what this guy is that I think he's actually a royal swordsman, like, the enemies that are all over the place in the Lost Bastille. They have the royal greatswords, they have the big crossbows. And I think that because his armor set is largely a mix of many different pieces from many different sets. Like, he's got the Hollow Soldier helm, he's got the Haid Knight chainmail, he's got a Varangian shield, but his Royal Swordsman gloves and his Royal Swordsman boots are the only pieces that match, suggesting that these could be the last pieces of his original, armor that have still been around after all this time. Like, as he's been wandering for so long, his helmet, he's had to scavenge a new helmet, he's had to scavenge a new chainmail, but he's still got the boots and gloves of his original issue. Same thing goes for his sword. It's his Zweihander, which, while the Royal Swordsmen carry a different sword, it's still a large over-the-shoulder greatsword, very similar to the Zweihander. So it's entirely possible that his original Royal Greatsword might have been broken at some point, and so he found something similar that he felt he would be best suited to use. Now, in gameplay, the only comment I have about this guy is that when you summon him, you should probably head to the boss room immediately, unless you want to fight the Haid Knights, because he will aggro on the Haid Knights if you're not paying attention. And the Haid Knights can be very tricky to deal with for early game players. So just keep them on a tight leash unless you want to fight a powerful enemy in the early game. Our next subject of our study today is Miss Magic Missile herself, Pilgrim Belclair. She's summonable for the Ruined Sentinel boss fight in the Lost Bastille, and then in the Scholar of the First Sin edition, she was added to the dual Dragon Rider boss fight in Castle Drangleic. Belclair, unlike Glencore, does seem to be an actual real name. I don't know what bearing it has on her character, other than it might be, a pun because she's carrying a sacred chime in her offhand, or, a bell. Get it? Okay, it wasn't funny. Anyway, even though she's, called Pilgrim Belclair and she carries a sacred chime and she's dressed as a cleric, she does not cast any miracles. She is an int build. She will use the staff in her right hand to fire stuff like Soul Spear at enemies from a distance, which is actually pretty handy because she's summonable for boss fights that have multiple heavily armored enemies, with the idea being that, you get in there and fight melee while she gives you fire support from a distance. It also helps that heavily armored enemies are usually the most weak to magic damage. In addition to her in addition to her cleric robe, she also has a couple of other interesting attire choices. Um, she's wearing Creighton's gloves, and she's got um, the rogue gauntlets, or the rogue boots, I mean, both of which could suggest that she is disguising herself for a reason, because both of those are like the Creighton gloves are specifically said that they are a forgery, and the rogue's boots are the rogue's boots. Rogues wear them, so we could have like she's might not be the most morally upstanding individual, or more of like she's disguising herself as a cleric for a reason. Uh, a good reason might be the fact that magic users were heavily persecuted in various kingdoms in the Dark Souls 2 setting throughout uh, the in-game history. Like, in fact, you find her summon sign in a prison cell, implying that she was caught eventually. Uh, the guidebook gives her, in fact, the guidebook has lore on her and suggests that she might have been involved at the Shrine of Amana, which, is interesting because you don't expect the guidebook to be giving out lore, but it is what it is. Her last interesting piece of attire is her lion mage headdress, which could carry some implications. For instance, there's the fact that in order to get to the Shrine of Amana, you have to go through the Shaded Woods, which is, Lion Clan turf. Uh, this could suggest that, at some point, the Lion Clan, or the people who became the Lion Clan, were were in control of the Shrine of Amana, or that was their territory, because the people who are living in the Shrine of Amana now are all from like Lindelt or Lanafear, or one of those, the super creepy isolationist dragon cult country. They're all from there, so they're relatively like recent occupants. Anyway, but it's maybe like the Lion Clan used to control that territory, and then she was like a member of the tribe that would eventually become the Lion Clan. And then she tried to escape, persecution by disguising herself as a cleric. It didn't work. She wound up in jail, and then she died in jail. So, rip, I guess. Alrighty then. Our next character is none other than Jester Thomas, probably the most famous phantom in the entire vanilla game. Uh, he's notable for being able to solo Mytha the Baneful Queen in the Earthen Peak with basically no help from the player at all. Um, he has dual pyromancy flames and unlimited casts of all his spells. And he is the only phantom with a arguably unique armor set. He wears the Jester set, which, you don't see anyone else wearing that, or even parts of it. And the only place you find it is you can buy it from Magirold of Lanafear in the Iron Keep. Some have speculated that this means that Magirold is Thomas, which, I mean, I can't disprove it, but I'm not sure if I necessarily believe that. Now, the Jester's armor set description reads that Jesters are more than a festival fixtures. Some have a second face hidden from public view, and Jester Thomas is no exception. If you visit Shulva, the Sanctum City, in the Crown of the Sunken King DLC, he will invade you and try to kill you. He will also invade you in a particularly nasty location, which is right after running through a gauntlet of enemies that you basically cannot kill unless you find and destroy the sarcophaguses which contain their bodies. Now, when he invades in the DLC, he definitely has a lot more, I guess you could call it personality to him, as the DLC is when they really start deciding to mix things up with like gestures and sort of unique behaviors. Like he'll do a taunt or he'll do a gesture immediately on invading you, which a lot of people exploit to, run up and get a few hits on him. He'll also have special gestures if he kills you, and he will taunt you if he interrupts you while you're trying to heal. He even has a contingency plan if you cast uh, if you cast Profound Still on him. He will pull out a long sword. I know it says broadsword here, but it's a long sword. And he will fight you in melee very grudgingly. Now, what I think Jester Thomas's deal is that I think his true loyalty is, in fact, to either the Sanctum City or to or to dragons in general. Like, this could mesh with the theory that Magirold of Lanifear is Jester Thomas, because Magirold is you know, he's the person you give your Dragon Covenant items to turn them in. Now, I believe that you can summon him in Earthen Peak because Mitha, the Baneful Queen, as part of her beauty routine, is pumping up poison from the ground. And this poison has turned her into part snake. And what's large and reptilian lives underground and spews a lot of poison everywhere. And the correct answer is Sin the Slumbering Dragon. So it's possible that this use of Sin's poison for skincare routine purposes could be considered, I don't know, desecration of some sort, and that's why Jester Thomas is out to get Nitha. Uh, and that's also why he invades you when you start mucking around in Shelva, because then you're the one who's uh, threatening the dragon. But yeah, this guy's pretty neat. Our next uh, phantom is Ashen Knight Boyd. Uh, in the original vanilla game, he's summonable for the Duke's Dear Freya boss fight in Brightstone Cove. And then in Scholar of the First Sin edition, they gave him a summon sign in Drangleic Castle to help you against the Mirror Knight. Now, this dude seems incredibly basic. He's got, a full royal soldier armor set. No, nothing interesting going around along there. He holds a very basic sword. What could give you a clue into his true identity and what he represents is his name, which is, Ashen Knight Boyd. Now, this isn't there isn't any weird translation quirks here. In Japanese, he is explicitly a Knight of Ash. And more explicit and more interestingly, it's the same ash, it's the same word that is used to refer to the ashen mist heart. Uh, Now, interestingly, in Freya's boss room, there is a corpse of a great dragon, which you can use the Ashen Mist Heart on, and it'll take you back to the moments immediately following the Great Dragon War. So the fact that he's a Knight of Ash and he's right in proximity into somewhere that you might be using the Ashen Mist Heart, leads me to suggest that this guy is somehow related to the Ashen Mist Heart. Like, you use the Ashen Mist Heart to enter memories. So this guy might be entering, like he might be a product or a memory, or maybe in fact he is himself a time traveler, and he's using the Ashen Mist Heart in some future time to enter the memory of this battle. Just like you can use the Ashen Mist Heart to enter the memories of the Giant War in a Forest of Fallen Giants. Also, I think it's pretty neat that his name in like his given name in Japanese is actually closer to like void, or it's like void, which could be more literal. Like I could totally buy that his real name is actually Void because the Ashen Mist Heart is like an empty circle, or it's like a void. Anyway, next we've got this guy, Lone Hunter Schmidt. He kind of sucks, to be honest. Like he's just really bad. You could summon him for the Black Gulch. You could summon him for the Rotten boss fight in the Black Gulch, and he's only armed with just his dinky little composite bow. He doesn't have melee options like Jester Thomas does. Uh, and what he will most often do is he will immediately roll into one of the many burning oil pools in the Rotten's boss room and die. Um, so I do not recommend bringing him. Uh, he's slightly more useful in the Shrine of Amana. They added him there in the Scholar of the First Sin DLC. I mean, the Scholar of the First Sin edition. Because it can be useful to help get a ranged dude to pick off all the Amana priestesses who are just who turn the area into Dark Souls' first bullet hell level. But other than that, he's just really bad, and maybe that's why he's so lonely, because he sucks. Ha 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 ha. Now his armor, he's just wearing a basic Wanderer set. There's nothing interesting there. The most interesting thing about him is actually his contrast with the boss he fights, because he's Lone Hunter Schmidt, and the Japanese, uh, in the Japanese, this, or at least the kanji that was used, I from the research I did, it had sort of like negative implications, like not just solid, like it means solitary, but also means like isolated. So this guy's on his own, and then you summon him to fight the Rotten, which is a bunch of dudes mashed together. So it's like you have Lone Hunter Schmidt, the isolated man, versus the giant ass hive mind. So that's all I've got for this guy, unfortunately. Right? To round off the base game NPC Phantoms, we have everybody's favorite uh, Berserker, Felicia the Brave. Um, she's summonable for the Shrine of Amana. Not the, like, you could say it's for the Demon of Song boss fight, but let's face it, it's just for the Shrine of Amana. She's actually kind of useless in the Demon of Song boss fight because the Demon of Song is a gimmick boss that NPCs can't handle very well. Her job is instead to get shot at by Amana Shrine Maiden, so you don't have to. And in Scholar of the First Sin, they add her as a phantom, or yeah, as a phantom you can summon for the Ruined Sentinels. And she will behave a similar way. She will run right in, hop off the ledge, and uh, start getting into a fight with whoever's down there. Uh, yeah, lucky she's got lots of defense. She's got a pretty hefty shield, and she's also got lots of Estus flasks because she is sure as hell going to need them. Uh, she uses the tower shield and a unique scuffed Haid Great Lance, which does no lightning damage. And this combination of weapons suggests to me that she might be a blue sentinel, or at least comes from the sort of same, or at least comes from Haid, possibly, because the tower shield is an item that you get in the Cathedral of Blue. And that would explain why she's so, eager, so to speak, because she's here to protect you from danger and to draw all the attention away. Um, Unfortunately, she will be overshadowed in Scholar of the First Edition by someone else who does that a lot more effectively. But we'll talk about him in a different video. Alrighty then, now we're moving into the DLC NPC Phantoms. And we're starting with Ruined Aflis from the Crown of the Sunken King DLC. He's summonable for the Cave of the Dead, which is the Sunken King DLC's quote-unquote challenge zone. Now, the challenge zones were special areas where people who owned the DLC could summon in players who didn't own the DLC, so that even if you didn't own the DLC, you could still get your hands on some DLC exclusive armor and weapons from enemies and stuff that drop them. The counterbalance being all of these challenge areas fucking suck and are absolutely miserable to run through. All three of them in all the DLCs usually have 2 NPC partners. So this guy in Scholar of the First Sin, he got added as a shade, which is a special type of NPC exclusive to that edition, which basically operates on a timer instead of the usual summon them and then beat the boss and then they peace out. Shades are usually for like a specific area, and they may have been brought in to counter the fact that Skull of the First Sin's enemy placement ideas were just, have all of them, all of the enemies, which made boss runs a slog. So now they added NPC Phantoms to help you with the boss runs. So this guy, he's summonable in Scarlet for Sin Edition for, a single corridor that's full of skeletons. And his primary purpose in both Cave of the Dead and Forest of Fallen Giants is as a human flashlight. The areas you summon him in are quite dark. You can run around with torches and light a bunch of sconces to try to make things, a bit more visible. Or you can just summon this guy and he will light the way with magic. Anyway, he's pretty clearly a scientist based on his gear he's got on. He's got on like the Acolyte set, which is the stuff that Aldi's cronies wore. He's called Ruined, and In the Japanese version, his name is Fallen Avarice, and specifically fallen in the context like, he's fallen from grace. So that's what it means by ruined, in that he's been ruined. Like he was a big shot, and now, he's mucking about in a dark hole. And I mean, it's also kind of a really neat pun in both languages because, you know, he's fallen, he's fallen and ruined in the sense that his entire career has been destroyed, but he is also, physically fallen since he is in a deep cave at the bottom of the world in like a scummy hole. And he's also literally scurrying about ruins. So, it's kind of clever wordplay there. His name could also be a pun, um, like because his name in Japanese is more pronounced Avarice, which could be a pun on avarice or, greed, which is like sort of a neat sort of self-contained story in itself. This guy was once, a very famous, well-known or successful scientist. He got greedy, and now he's resorting to crawling around in muddy caves, thousands of or way below the ground. Uh, Sucks to suck, my guy. Next, we have Aflis's co-worker, Rapacious Andre. Rapacious, of course, meaning he likes to loot and pillage. And the Japanese version doesn't cut any corners and just straight up calls him Greedy Andre. Um, so this guy is pretty clearly a tomb robber, which is also kind of funny because he's wearing the, explorer set, which, could kind of be commentary on how um, all those, tales of Victorian and 19th century exploration were just, extension of European, they were just extensions of uh, the colonial powers' efforts to, loot and pillage their conquered peoples. Uh, so yeah, but what's interesting about this guy is that this is where the move sets, like this DLC is where they started getting a little more creative with the NPC move sets. This guy makes heavy use of consumables. He uses resin, lightning resin on his shotel. He uses magic pots. He uses throwing knives. Like these aren't stuff that NPCs had previously been using. So it's kind of interesting to see like them making these first baby steps towards more complex allies. Okay, next we have the boss fight against Sin the Slumbering Dragon, which has two different NPCs you can summon for it. The first is Transcendent Ed. He's pretty straightforward. He's a member of the Dragon Covenant, and you're fighting a dragon, which is kind of like, I guess it's kind of odd because I never really understood where the Dragon Covenant actually stood on dragons. Because, they really seem to like the dragons, like, they're all in the dragon shrine, they're guarding an ancient dragon. But then this guy helps you kill a dragon. Like maybe he's helping you. He knows that Sin is in great pain because of the amount of poison he's got in his body. Um, and he's considering it like, a mercy killing. But anyway, yeah, he's a Dragon Covenant member. he's at least level 3 because he's got the sword. So he's good at his job. And after you kill Sin, he will bow to you before he leaves the arena. So like he's one of the first allies to like use gestures in that sense. He's also unique, or not unique, but he doesn't show up anywhere else. Like he's just for this the dragon boss fight. But other than that, I got nothing. The other NPC you can summon for the Sin the Slumbering Dragon boss fight is significantly more interesting. This is Abyss Viva. Um, there's a lot going on with her. To start off, her name Viva could be a pun on fervor, like religious fervor. It could also be, and this is a bit of a stretch that I'm making here, a reference to the 2013 Japanese mobile role-playing game Brave Frontier, where one of the characters you can get is named Viva. This is the only other place I could find this name, even when putting in the even in the Japanese text version. Like I went to the Japanese wiki, I found her name written in uh, Japanese script. I copied and pasted it into Google. This is the only other thing that came up. Uh, Now I'm no expert in Brave Frontier lore. I didn't even know about the game. It's not even act. I mean, there's a Brave Frontier 2 now apparently, but the original Brave Frontier shut down in April of 2022. So just a few months ago. Not a few months ago, but I'm recording this in December. Uh, but from what I gathered, in that the FIFA in that game did serve some sort of Dark Lord at some point, which wouldn't be entirely out of sync with what Abyss FIFA is, but we'll get to that in a bit. Uh, Next is her title of Abyss, which is a product of the translation. The Japanese version is more specific and describes her as a Shugyoja, which in feudal Japan, a Shugyoja was like a samurai on a sort of pilgrimage. Like they would go on sort of a road trip without the protection of their daimyo or their lord. And they would like learn new techniques, take freelance work, and maybe even find like a new lord to serve if if it came down to it. Um, Now, obviously, Abbess Viva is not a samurai; she's a holy woman of some sort, but this would imply that she's on a similar sort of pilgrimage of like learning new techniques and just developing her skills as a cleric. Her loadout is a combination between the Dranglaic uh, priest sets and Licia's set, which is obviously what Lindelt clerics would be wearing. Lindelt, of course, if you know Dark Souls 2 lore, is the isolationist dragon worshipping country founded by none other than the Drakeblood Knights, who were the people who destroyed Shelva in the first place. They decided to try to ease their own guilt over what they had done by appropriating Shelva's culture and covering up everything. Yeah, so they're really swell guys. Um, yeah, but that could give an indication of to why she's here. Like she's on some sort of holy pilgrimage to like the land, um, the land her people once destroyed. Uh, I'm surprised anybody would let her go on this because how seemingly intent the people of Lindell are of covering all their crimes up. but who knows? Maybe she's like very high ranking. Uh, Now, the addition of um, the Drangleic gloves could indicate some sort of connection between, well, I'd say it's more of a supporting evidence that there is in fact a connection between the Church of Lindelt and the Kingdom of Drangleic. My personal theory is that uh, like if you go and you once you beat in the Sin's boss room, you can find Yorg's ring, I believe, which was Sir Yorg was the leader of the Drake Blood Knights, and it's got the seal, it's got the Royal Drangleic seal on it, which is sort of implying that the entire raid on Shulva was orchestrated by Drangleic in the first place, which honestly I wouldn't put it past them. Like Drangleic, like King Vendrick was said to have defeated like the four great ones to build his kingdom, and like everybody else in Dark Souls 2, King Vendrick's kingdom is built on the ruins of all the other kingdoms he had to step on to get to where he is today. And Shelvo might have just been one of those kingdoms. So it's possible that, the Drake Blood Knights and then by extension the Lindelt Clergy are all basically controlled by the Drangleic monarchy to some extent. I don't know. That's just my crack lore theory. Another interesting thing about Abbess Viva is her weapon of choice, which is the Chime of Want. The Chime of Want is it's the sacred chime you get from the Chandra's boss soul. Which, why does she have it? Obviously, she didn't kill the Chandra to get it, but it might just be because it's the strongest sacred chime available. But it's like the chime of want, specifically the strongest chime for like casting hexes. And Abasusa doesn't cast any hexes. She uses exclusively miracles. So that's kind of bizarre. I don't have any explanation for that. Also, I'd just like to add that in addition to being summoned for the Sin the Slumbering Dragon boss fight, she can be summoned for the worst area in all of Dark Souls 2, the Frozen Outskirts. She's like your healer for that run. Like you can summon an entire D&D party for that region, which is like kind of good that you can because that region's an absolute miserable slogfest. Um, but I mean, despite all the intrigue and mystery surrounding her, as an NPC, she's kind of meh. Like she's very squishy. Her miracles don't do that much damage. Uh, and to be honest, at least against Sin, you're better off not summoning her. Okay, for our next subjects, we have a double feature, that being Drifter Swordsman Idel and Steel Wheeled Glory. These two come as a set. You can summon them both for the Iron Passage and uh, for the Suralon boss fight. Both of these are challenge areas, so they're both miserable. I mean, Alon's a cool boss, but his boss run sucks. Um, yeah, you can also summon Idel alone for the Belfry Soul area. These two have their own, unique NPC behavior gimmick in that they will use wood carvings to introduce themselves. Like, when they summon, they will drop wood carvings that say hello. And I think they will also drop some after beating the boss. Uh, as for their names, Idel, his name in Japanese could also be pronounced with like Ador, which is like has a sort of Nordic vibe. I could believe that if that was like his real name, like that was his like intended name. However, Idel also sounds very similar to Lucatiel and Athletiel, and he's wearing Creighton's chainmail, which has, which is ostensibly from Mira. So it's possible that Idel is also from Mira. Steel-willed Lori, on the other hand, she's called steel-willed. In the Japanese, this word is more of the word used for her more of means like indomitable or unbreakable, which, is a pun because, or is wordplay because she's wearing a full mastodon set with sword and shield. You are not breaking her poise anytime soon. Um, Now, as for their lore, or where they might come from, as I've already speculated, I think Idel is also from Mira, although he's like unlike Glencore, where like I could sort of speculate that he was, originally wearing the royal swordsman set and then was scavenging other pieces. All of Idel's shit looks scavenged. So it's truly possible that he is, a drifter swordsman. Like he's roaming around. Steel-willed Lori wears the full Mastodon set, so it's possible that she's like one of the original Mastodon Knights, before they were turned into Mastodons. But I don't know. I don't know much about Mastodon Knight lore. Um, what is interesting is what connection these two have with the Iron King, because they're exclusively found in the Iron King DLC in Idel's case, Belfry Soul, which is another Iron King related area. And that I don't know. I don't know why these people are here. Um, in gameplay, according to the wiki, they both do really crap damage. I forget if this is true. It's been a while since I last ran into them, uh, or since I last summoned them for a boss fight. Uh, but anyway, the wiki believes that this is because they both have massive weapons, like the Mastodon Greatsword and the Stone Twin Blade are both very high strength requirement weapons. And the wiki speculates that neither of these NPCs actually have the appropriate strength requirements to use said weapons, which would be really funny if that were the case. All right, we're coming toward the end here with a final DLC, the Crown of the Ivory King DLC. Now, most of the NPCs used in this DLC were recycled from other places. A notable exception being Twiggy Shay, who you could summon for the final boss against the Burnt Ivory King himself. Like like Pilgrim Belclair and like other NPCs we'll talk about later, Twiggy Shay appears to be mainly a fire support NPC intended for, the large mob battle that precedes the boss fight. He'll stay back and take pot shots at the Scorched Ivory Knights, the Scorched Loris Knights with his giant great bow. Uh, Now his name is real. It means Shay is a Celtic name which means like fortunate or admirable, according to the internet. And Twiggy means thin. Or you could say slim. Like in the Japanese version, it's like his name is like Slim Shay. So, this guy could be an Eminem reference. I'm not betting on it though. Um, he introduces himself with a prostration gesture, which gives him, a little bit of personality. Other than that, he's kind of an oddball. Like, I don't really understand. Like, my best theory is that I noticed that he's the only white phantom in vanilla in the non-Scarlet First Sin edition to actually wear DLC gear. So my theory is that since there's no really reason to wear for him to wear the bell helm, because none of the Lois Knights use none of the Lois Knights could get headshots on you unless I unless there's some hidden mechanic I don't know about. But that's what the bell helmet does. It blocks headshots and it makes like, a dong when something hits you. And my theory is after like all the others, like after realizing that people weren't picking up on like the cool exclusive loot like costumes and the other DLCs, or rather maybe they just really wanted people to see the bell helm. Like they noticed that people weren't trying out, or not as many people were exploring the DLCs and fully looking for all the cool gear. Like maybe they're like, hey, why is nobody wearing the Pharaoh's mask or the hollow skin? Those were both, Crown of Iron King DLC exclusives. So they were like, okay, we'll put the bell helm on this guy and make him summonable. And then people will see him and they'll be like, man, where can I get that? And that'll incentivize them more to explore. So that's my theory regarding Tuishe. Um, it's also interesting to note that he has, the lion bangles, or the lion warrior bracelets, which could indicate like I believe there's some sort of connection between, Elim, Lois Ferosa, and the Lion Clan as a whole. But that's just my lore speculation. Anyway, uh, this guy's all right. Um, he's unfortunately, vastly overshadowed the fact that you can summon Lucatiel for the Ivory King boss fight. And I mean, why wouldn't you summon Lucatiel? Like even if you don't believe Lucatiel is a fighter, she like this Lucatiel, you gotta hang out with her. You've got to max out her social link. Anyway, uh, now let's move on to our last character of the day. Okay, she technically shows up earlier. She shows up, of course, in all three DLCs, but I felt like saving someone quote unquote good for last. So here's Steelheart Ellie, the girl of all time. As I just mentioned, she shows up in all three DLCs. Um, Always to fight against the Dark Queen or the Dark Queen's direct servant. So uh, she shows up to fight Elana herself in the Crown of the Sunken King DLC. In the Crown of the Iron King DLC, she shows up to fight the Fume Knight, which is of course the Fume Knight is a thrall of Nadalia, Bride of Ash. And then in the Crown of Ivory King uh, DLC, she shows up to help you fight Ava, the Queen's pet, who is of course the Queen's pet. Um, and she's clearly here to kick some dark ass. Like why else would she be wearing, the veil that gives you 100% curse immunity? She knows what she's here for, and she's ready for it. No Dark Queen's going to be cursing her today. Unfortunately, none of the Dark Queens she's actually fighting actually use Curse, but that's beside the point. Um, Also, sheer moveset actually changes in the third DLC. She gains pyromancy moves, which you might say that she learned from her time in the Fume Tower, possibly. Uh, I don't think those are terribly effective against Ava, but it's character development. Anyway, the most notable thing about her is, of course, that she fights with her fists only. She uses castas. And, while many people might be hesitant to summon her, she did save my ass against the she saved my ass against the Fume Knight. So as long as you can like work with her, she's not entirely useless like some people would have you believe. But anyway, she's cool. Like just as a character concept, even if her damage output is lacking. Uh, just the like she's unique, and that's what I like about her. Like there's no other NPCs in the front from soft games that are just going willing to like throw hands with someone like this, and I kind of respect that. The developers had, I guess you could say, the audacity to create a character like this and still not have them completely suck. Anyway, uh, that was the video. Uh, Thanks for sticking through this and listening to me uh, trip over my own words multiple times. Uh, if you liked it, leave a like. If you want to hear more of these videos when they come out, then subscribe, I guess. Like there's no guaranteed regular upload schedule or anything. I make videos when I feel like it. But if you want to get a video when I feel like it, then you can hit the subscribe button. But thanks. Uh, and have fun playing online in Dark Souls 2 now that the servers are back up. Peace out.